This week in comic books from DC, we got Night Terror. Oh, we got some Night Terror going on and a lot of it. So we're going to kind of break down what's required reading and what's not required reading. But we got some great covers too, to be honest with you. Some cool stuff. Over in the lands of Marvel, we got Thor Annual #1 that came out. And where is this immortal Thor thing going to be taking us? And of course, who is Mythos that is in this as well, who was defeated. But first, before we jump into anything, do you know about the Comic Book Community Awards? Check this out.
Welcome to Forever, man. Let's go. Come on. It's forever. No surrender.
All right, guys, if you haven't yet, definitely go on by and check out the comicbookcommunityawards.org. That link will be down below, of course, for your convenience. But let's jump into this week's comic books and see what we got. We'll start off the list with Night Terrors. First Blood. I went with this Dark Crisis kind of cover here. And to be honest, I'm not really sure why I did, to be quite honest. It's just seemed cool to me at the time, but now I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh. But regardless, this is going to be required reading. This is your main line into the whole Night Terrors thing, where we kind of learn that Dr. Destiny back in the day, he had a gemstone that was the Dream Stone, and of course it has its opposite. Like all MacGuffins in comic books, there's an opposite called the Nightmare Stone that he hid in a superpowered being's nightmares someplace out there. Our new villain, Insomniac, wants this stone. So what does he do? Puts everybody to sleep. Everybody's going through nightmares, so he can kind of travel around. We also learn that Batman, of course, has contingencies for this kind of stuff, training himself to overcome his own fears or use courage. That's going to be a key thing in this, how people interact in their own nightmares. I want to make that a point because that's going to be important later. So definitely, as we go through this, we kind of learn the motives. Also, Insomnia has a problem with heroes as general. We learned in here he does not like them as a whole to begin with. So I think that's going to be key to this storyline here. But that's your main vein story right there. That's what you're traveling down for the next 2 months as we hit this whole Night Terror thing. Next, another kind of required reading for this will be the Batman series, as most of this is going to be him traveling through various dreams because of the contingencies he has in place to be able to kind of work himself through this kind of stuff. In the meantime, Deadman is controlling his body, which is great, but Batman's not a fan of this either. But in this, he gets tapped into his normal fears, parents' death and stuff like that, and we finally see that he's kind of getting over that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, since he is fear himself, right, to the bad guys and the people of Gotham, kind of displaying himself as a bat, this should help him dramatically through this. I've always said Batman's does have a superpower, right? It's that whole discipline over motivation thing. And I really think we're going to see that kind of shine in here. Definitely. Black Adam, maybe kind of a required reading, only because of the last panel where Batman meets up with Black Adam in this. Of course, Black Adam's fear in here is, of course, being weak, right? Being his human form and how that affects him and how he can be manipulated when he's in his weaker form. It kind of travels him through that. Not overly important. Didn't really much care for the storyline in this. We're dealing with a lot of Egyptian stuff. Beast the cat is just an amalgamation of the Egyptian god Beastel or something along those lines. It's an Egyptian god. Not really that entertaining, but now that we see that possibly Batman's able to travel to other people's nightmares, much like Insomnia, who's looking for this stone. So I don't know how required this is going to be. Again, one panel doesn't really tell me much. But I'll throw it out there as a speculation that, yeah, Batman is probably putting a team together, because that's what he does in these situations. All right, next, we got the Poison Ivy Night Terror. So her greatest fear is living a suburban life, apparently. In her nightmares, she's stuck in a suburban neighborhood with Batman and Catwoman as a neighbor. Harley Quinn and her are trying to build a relationship in this. And then, of course, there's always the outset, right? The thing that's outside of the dream that's being pushed into this. This is somebody from HR. yeah, I don't know. But in this one, you get to see a lot of your rogue gallery and people just living basic suburban life. So her greatest fear is being normal. That plays a point in all this too. And she doesn't scream and yell through this, as she just kind of wants to see what's going on. In other words, she's facing it with a little bit of courage. Next, Ravager. Ravager's going to be required reading. I'm calling it right now. Mostly because of a couple of panels in here where it kind of describes her as being the one that can be in both worlds, right? Has a foot in both worlds. I think this is going to be an important character as we push forward in this, because of her abilities and stuff like that. But that cover right there, I can't tell you, that speaks to, well, that would speak to anybody, really. So, yeah. In this, we get a terrifying story of a young girl. Turns out that it's her. And, of course, her father being Deathstroke. And is he dead? Is he not dead? Kind of playing off of that as well. And, again, this is something that Azomnia is doing to everybody. And we find out that he's actually a horror villain in this one. Like, it gets a little deep in here. It got deep in Batman, but it gets really deep in here. Next, Joker. This is just fun. This is just fun. What happens if Batman slips, fall, busts his face, and dies, right? And the Joker had nothing to do with it. Ho-hum he becomes, right? Working a middle management corporate job with a vague title that has no real responsibilities and happen to function in that world as well. But, again, in this, he's not screaming and running through fear. He's just being the Joker in it. And just kind of playing along with it, it seems like, right? Like he almost understands what's going on, and he's just going to have fun with it as he goes through it in certain points of this. But again, that Nightmare Stone is hidden in somebody's dreams, and Azomnia is jumping through all this. So what does all this entail? And again, that's probably not required reading, but I do find it fun and entertaining, to say the least. So in all of this, what you're really dealing with is a great example of how good, bad, right? That's a thing for people. But courage is something that can kind of relate in both subjects. Our characters, some are facing their fears, their nightmares, if you will, which doesn't always correlate. But in this one, we're pushing them together. We're also getting a great horror story here. I don't know. Besides the gimmicky ones of suburban life or a corporate job, right? We're actually seeing DC kind of step up its horror game in this. Everybody got the assignment. Everybody understands. And everybody's telling a very similar story. For the next 2 months, it should feel very connected. So regardless of what book you get, I think you're going to kind of get a piece of how this all relates. But again, the main vein is probably going to be the story. Just kind of save on those dollar bills so you can get other comic books. Some of it, I hope I'm right on this, but DC's stepping up its horror game, which is beautiful. Oh, the only way this would have worked better if instead of 2 months in the middle of the summer, they did a September-October time frame. You know, Halloween. That's my only criticism. All right, next, continuing on with DC, we get Peacemaker tries hard, and man, he tries hard. In this one, you may remember in the last issue, he gets betrayed by the Brain and his henchmen, has his dog stolen. Nobody wants to hang out with him and be part of his party. If you love the James Gunn series and you're waiting for season 2 to come through and you just need something in between then, this is the same character. It's the same flaws, the same weirdness to him, and the whole 9 yards with some elevated characters in it. More especially, we get a call back to a comic book hero from the 1940s known as the Red Bee, who's his parole officer in this one. If you drop this after issue 1, or even after issue 2 because you didn't think it was going anywhere, this is a great time to pick back up on it. Yeah, it was a little bit of a slow burn, but now we're moving into this because now we're going to go John Wick, that dog, back from the villains, and we're bringing the parole officer or the Red Bee back into play. Yeah, I always like it when they bring back like forgotten people. By the way, Red Bee's first appearance was Hit Comics #1 from 1945. So next we get Clobbering Time. So this ends this mini-series right here with a very good message and point. So Ogdu, right, not to rehash everything, but just wants to change the universe because he doesn't like the way everything has become. his future. He's in the future, didn't like how everything turned out, so he just wants to destroy it all and start it all over in his own image and be that guy, right? And then, unfortunately, Thang has to remind him, instead of trying to change everything around you, maybe you could go back in time and, fix the decisions you made. Personal responsibility, because he did kill his own father and didn't like the outcome of all this when his perceived reality of what superheroes weren't met to his imagination. Oh man, that's a good lesson. Right? Not everything has to change around you in order for you to live the best life. You just got to take responsibility for your own decisions. And of course, he doesn't catch this lesson. And with the help of Doctor Doom, a type of watcher from another reality, they kind of reset everything back to its normal plane, imprisoning, of course, Ogdu in the same concept. It was a good series. Overall, it was a good series. If you like that kind of Mad Max, or not Mad Max, but Mad Magazine type art in some issues, I think it was even done. Again, I need to learn the name of that art style, I should say. It's very unique, very busy, a lot going on in the art, great storyline, great dialogue. Every character had its own voice, and you just knew who it was through the reading without even looking at the pictures. And that told its own story as well. So I enjoyed the entire series as a whole. Would I recommend it? Sure, I'll recommend anything to anybody. Read what you like, definitely. All right. Next, we get Thor, annual number 1. So this kind of picks up on a storyline that I haven't been reading, where Mythos, aka MODOK, which is always an abbreviation, right, is kind of changed reality, where everybody kind of forgot who they were and what they are, and kind of built this kind of fascist communist state where things like standing in lines are a regular thing. Thor comes there to try to fix everything and tries to do it the way his father would have done it. And his father only would fight battles he knew he could win. And Thor feels he can't win this battle, so it's time to retreat, running into Peter Parker, or this version of Peter Parker before Spider-Man or anything. Come to find out, he would still be the hero even in this world, standing up for the defenseless, and reminds Thor that it's not the fact of winning or losing the battle. You still have to fight and be good. Goes back, defeats MODOK, and imprisons him, and gives him a gift or curse. I'll let you decide in the comments down below. Gives him self-actualization. Remember, MODOK is nothing more than a machine that has to do things, right? He does things. He's consistently processing and doing things, and he does it in a very hubris way. But actually allowing him to see himself for what he is. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I hope they touch back on that later, as he's imprisoned right now. I don't know. Will they make him a hero, though? I hope they don't. I hope he gets more vicious because of it. Oh, that would be something. And then we jump into our first few pages of what Immortal Thor will be like. And I'll be honest with you, it didn't really hype me up. It seemed kind of boring. Him and Sif are sitting there looking at the broken Rainbow Bridge and discussing what it's like to be a king versus this. Mjolnir gets fixed and repaired because it's been cracked through the Odin storm. Really, and then it just leaves with this final page with Thor holding both Mjolnir, a fixed Mjolnir, and Stormbreaker, his kind of axe. You may remember that. Didn't really excite me. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to be excited about something. I wanted to see something cool. Not a conversation near a rainbow and then one panel, full page panel, of him aggressively looking back at you with two weapons in his hand. That just kind of missed it for me. I'm not going to let it judge me. The first issue of Immortal Thor that comes out, I will be picking it up just to see if there's any connection to Immortal Hulk. Maybe it's just my name. Maybe it's a coincidence. I don't know. Last, Fantastic Four. So and I still say this is the most brilliant comic book out here. This is the conclusion to this particular story arc dealing with Zargor, the monster. And it has perceived everybody's mind and changed their realities to just serve her. It's a her. Sue Storm and Alicia defeat the monster by reflecting its powers back onto it. making it forget that it has the powers to begin with. Everybody recovers, everybody does well. I thought it was really cool how they all fought combat in this. Again, it was great. And this is very Alicia centric. It's basically her narrative through the story, and how even though she is disabled with blindness, that she still holds a part in the Fantastic Four as a character that can be useful and assist when needed. I thought that was a strong message. More importantly, she talks about how comic books and comic strips, how Thing reads them to her, and how she kind of perceives them, right? Using other senses and descriptions that given to her. Even to the point to where she kind of references New York City during the newspaper strikes of 1945, how Mayor LaGuardia would come out there and read comic books to the children, right? I thought that was great. And the one that I went and searched it. I'll try to play it for you here at the end if I can. YouTube, copyrights, that stuff, even if it's nonsense. And how he even did it. And even to some case kind of pointed out that, yeah, this could have been something to learn political favor or political points. But at the end of the day, what's better than a comic book and the message that it can bring? Which LaGuardia also hit in his kind of review of it. Imagine that. Way back in 1945. Somebody read a comic strip and did a review on it and showed the meaning in it. Huh. It's a good idea for a YouTube channel. Alright guys, that's my haul for this week. I got nothing else. Gonna jump into it. Again, big shout out real quick to Nick's Kicks and Comics for the AK or the AOK that he sent me, the Firefly cover, and the little Duke toy that will forever be immortalized in the Pocan Joe office here. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'll see you all next week. Talk to y'all later. Bye.
Here's Big Tracy. Let's see what Big Tracy is doing. Now, you remember, and we hear Wet Wash. Listen, baby, I know you're a maid at Van Hoosen's. I saw you there last week. And I know there's something phony about that dough. Now, when we get it, it's going to be 50-50. Okay? Then maybe you'd like some more of your laundry torn to pieces. Rip! She's ripping her laundry there, and a little delicate piece of lingerie. Now, get this picture. Here is Wet Wash. The doors of the laundry wagon are open. He's leaning with his back toward the wagon, and he's counting his money. 2, 3, 4,000. And the picture is a hand of Breathless stretching out. She's got hold of that iron pot. Remember the iron pot she took from the Van Hoosen's gardener's flat to put the money in? And crash! She crashes it on its head. Knocked out. And say, children, what does it all mean? It means that dirty money never brings any luck. No, dirty money always brings sorrow and sadness and misery and disgrace.